Hello my friends, my name is Rich and welcome to Greatest Rock and Metal. On Greatest Rock and Metal I talk about what are for me the greatest rock and metal albums, bands, gigs of all time, based on listening to thousands of albums and going to hundreds of gigs over many years. If you enjoy what you see, please press the red button to subscribe to the channel to see future episodes. It's free and it's easy to do, and I'd be very grateful. Thank you very much. Okay, today the featured band is Foo Fighters. And the reason I'm going to feature Foo Fighters today is because this month is the 10th anniversary of the Wasting Light album, and I'm going to be talking about this album a little bit later because this for me is one of the best Foo Fighters albums, so I thought I'd do an episode to celebrate it. So what was my introduction to the Foo Fighters? Well, probably not that different to many. I'd been a big Nirvana fan, and once Nirvana had split up and drummer Dave Grohl had to think about what he was going to do next. It became known that he'd been working on some songs and that he was going to put a band together himself. And then in June 1995, a video for the song This Is a Call hit. And straight away, I, like many others, were like, wow, brilliant, Dave. A drummer had come from behind the drums. He'd taken the mic stand, he'd taken the guitar. He was the front man in this band, and what a front man, and what a songwriter. Now think about it, he'd been working with one of the greatest songwriters there's ever been in Kurt Cobain in Nirvana, and certainly Dave had learnt a few tricks from him. The band themselves and that first album, which is here, simply titled Foo Fighters, it had very much a Nirvana feel to it. Of course it did. That's the kind of music that Dave was into. A mixture of rock and pop and metal with some punk in there as well, and more importantly, the great melodies that Nirvana were known for and of course Foo Fighters have become known for. And a mixture of the clean singing and the screamo kind of vocals as well. It was all to be found on the debut Foo Fighters album, and on subsequent albums the formula hasn't really changed very much. A collection of great songs across all of these albums. So straight out the gate there was big interest in the Foo Fighters, and then with their second album, The Colour and the Shape, things really exploded because they had some massive songs on there. They had the singles My Hero, Monkey Wrench and Everlong, and those three songs really propelled that album and propelled the band. And over the course of the many years they grew into be what they are today, which is a huge stadium band. Play stadiums and headline festivals all over the world. Very popular band. 26-year-long career now, and a very successful career it has been. Mainly thanks to Dave Grohl's ability to write brilliant singles. I don't think, in my opinion, he has made his greatest album yet, and might never have a classic album. Don't get me wrong, there's some very strong albums in the discography, of which Wasting Light is right up there near the top. But it's not a discography in my mind that has a classic album yet amongst them, but an album full of great singles. So a little bit more about the band. That first album was just Dave Grohl. He did all of the performing, the bass, drum, vocals, guitar on that album. It was purely him, and then he decided to put together a touring band, and it's that touring band that has had quite a few tweaks to it in the early days, but in more recent times has remained very consistent. And one of the things I really love about the Foo Fighters band is the drummer, Taylor Hawkins. Now, you've got to be a pretty confident guy and a very, very good drummer to be able to be the drummer in Dave Grohl's band, because Dave Grohl is one of the greatest rock and roll drummers there's ever been. And Taylor Hawkins does a fantastic job in the band, and he also brings a great personality to it as well. So I wanted to give a special shout out to Taylor Hawkins' work on all of the albums, apart from obviously the debut, which was all Dave. And also Colour and the Shape was all Dave as well. Taylor has done the rest. Okay, so on to the 10th anniversary of this album, Wasting Light. This is a great album. It's right up there for me as one of the best albums. And what's interesting about this album as well is the history of it, so to speak. The career of Foo Fighters had been on this steady uprising, as I say, all the way up to, in the end, playing the likes of Wembley Stadium, 2 nights at Wembley Stadium, captured here on this brilliant DVD Blu-ray. I was at one of these gigs as well, and luckily I was there at the night when Jimmy Page and John Paul Jones from Led Zeppelin made an appearance for a couple of songs that you can see here on the DVD. But I'll talk about that another time. So they kind of reached this pinnacle, and Grohl wanted to do something a little bit different with this album. And what they did different is that they basically built a recording studio in his garage at home. And they decided that recording studio also would be analog. So not the digital kind of recording and Pro Tools that we have today. He went back to the old style analog system and brought in producer Butch Vig, who had produced the mega-selling Nirvana album Nevermind. So an interesting album in that respect. And it is an album that not only does sound great, and it's a brilliant rock album, really does rock hard, this one, but also the songwriting is excellent across this album. This and The Colour and the Shape for me have the most consistent level of songwriting across them. So what are my favourite 4 tracks on this album? Well, the opening track, Bridge Burning. Great song. It's a brilliant way to start the album. It starts off with this guitar riff, and then the rest of the instruments come in, the drum roll, and it builds up into this massive scream, and off we go into the track. It's a real roller coaster track. There's a lot of ups and downs in the song, and it's got a great sing-along chorus to it, and it's a brilliant way to start the album. The next track I would choose is the second track, which again follows the similar formula. It is the Foo Fighters formula, really, very similar to the Nirvana one, in which a lot of their songs have this roller coaster kind of quiet, loud, screamo, clean singing kind of formula to it. Excuse me. And Rope has a similar kind of approach as well. Very heavy song, this one. What I love about this song as well is the middle section. There's a brilliant kind of drum break in the middle section of this song, and a real screamo rah chorus to it. Great song. The next song I will pick is the 4th track on the album, titled White Limo. Now, talk about heavy. Whew. White Limo, heaviest song on the album. Here we get a mixture of heavy metal and punk. A lot of screaming vocals on this one. Great song, real rock metal punk song. gets you in the mood. And one of the great things about this song as well, it's had a brilliant I nearly said a brilliant limo with it. It does have a brilliant limo with it, and that limo appears in the video for it. And also driving the limo in the video for this song is the one and only Lemmy of Motorhead. And there's a kind of Motorheadish feel to this song as well. Great song. And the fourth track I would choose is the last track on the album, and actually for me the standout track on the album. It's called Walk. This is very much, in my opinion, kind of like a song of hope. Learning to walk again. Brilliant chorus. Everything about this song is brilliant. It's got that Foo Fighters formula of some great melodies, the screaming, the big guitars, and the I call it the roller coaster of riffs throughout the song. Fantastic way to end the album. This is the kind of song that you would normally find at the beginning of albums, within the first 3 tracks. To put this at the end of the album, such a strong song, is a great way to close the album. But also it kind of demonstrates what a strong album this is. There's certainly many songs on here that are contenders for my top 4. There's things like These Days and Alandria, and also I Should Have Known. A little mention about the track I Should Have Known. This also sees Nirvana bassist Chris Novoselic making an appearance, playing bass, and I think he was playing accordion on it as well, I seem to remember. And it's another very good track on here. So, would thoroughly recommend this album, Foo Fighters, Wasting Light. Great album indeed. Now, I'm going to tell you about the first time I saw Foo Fighters live. But before I do that, let's take a look at Rock T-shirts by the Sea. Okay, so by a set of strange coincidences, I find myself in Vancouver, Canada in 1995. And what do you know? There's this little known band who are going to be playing a gig as a support. Now they were going to be supporting a guy called Mike Watt. And I had never heard of Mike Watt, and I really don't know anything about him today, other than the fact that he was a bass player in a band called Minutemen. That was probably his most well-known band. Other than that, I have nothing to add about Mike Watt. The support band, in fact there were 2 support bands that day. The support bands were Hovercraft and this band called Foo Fighters. Now this is May 1995. Here is the ticket. It's quite a faded ticket, okay, and the location for this gig is a place called the Commodore Ballroom in Vancouver, Canada. Now the Commodore Ballroom, I didn't know this at the time until I was in there, is famous for its bouncy floor. It has an incredibly bouncy floor, brilliant place to see a band like the Foo Fighters, for sure, whose a lot of their songs involve a lot of bounce. And this floor, historically, this is an old venue. It was made for ballroom dancing, hence Commodore Ballroom. And the architect made the floor out of tyres, rubber tyres and horsehair, which gave it its special kind of unique bounce. And now, about these support bands. Well, Hovercraft was a band that was put together by a guy by the name of Eddie Vedder. Eddie Vedder just so happened to be the lead singer in a band called Pearl Jam, who were absolutely mega huge in America at the time, and are still absolutely mega huge in America and worldwide today. And they were the opening band. And then the second support band was Foo Fighters, playing their first ever tour. So it was a short set, and it only, I mean, there's obviously they were playing songs from the debut album, a debut album that wasn't even out yet. It was going to be another 2 months before the album was out. So this was watching a support band, who the only thing I knew about the support band was that Dave Grohl was singer and guitarist, and also Pat Smear, who had also been in Nirvana in the latter days of Nirvana as a guitarist. Those two guys were on the stage as part of Foo Fighters, and it was a great gig. Unusual to be watching such famous guys up there playing support band, playing songs that none of us had heard before. And I'll be honest, I can't say that many of those songs stood out to me at the time. The only one I really remember is the song For All the Cows. And again, a lot of that was due to the bouncy floor, because For All the Cows starts off very slow, and then it's got this bouncy kind of bit once it gets going, and I can visualize now all of us bouncing up and down, because this place was packed. Only holds about 1,000 people, less than 1,000 people actually, and it was absolutely ram-packed in there. And I felt a bit sorry for Mike Watt, because it was very obvious that pretty much everyone was there because Eddie Vedder was there and Dave Grohl were there. And even though none of us knew what any of the songs were going to be played that night, and most of the crowd didn't have a clue what the Mike Watt songs were as well. Now, what was interesting about the Mike Watt set is that Grohl and Smear and Vedder and some of the other guys also played as part of Mike Watt's band as well. So that at least made it more interesting to watch Mike Watt. But I'll be honest with you, I don't remember anything about his particular set. And not a huge amount about the other two sets either. This picture here is actually a photo that was taken at the time in the Commodore Ballroom of the Foo Fighters playing. So it's more about the occasion. What I do remember about that gig is the occasion of it, the excitement that Dave Grohl was back. We were kind of all hoping that maybe, even though we knew it wasn't going to happen, maybe we're all hoping that maybe a Nirvana song might be played, but we all kind of knew it wasn't going to happen. I even think it was maybe David said in the interviews he wasn't going to be doing any. And I seem to recall we hoped but kind of knew not going to happen. I said that enough now, I think. And it was just enjoyable to be there for that occasion, to have seen the Foo Fighters so early on in their career as a support band. And not many tracks played, probably about a 45-minute set, and pretty much most of the tracks from here, although there was a song called Butterflies, which even today has never been released to my knowledge, but I seem to remember it was a pretty good song. I do remember that song as well. Mainly because I kind of kept waiting for it to appear on some of their albums, and it never did, so it kind of stuck in the memory. So there you have it. That's my thoughts on Foo Fighters. Today, one of the world's biggest bands, and I've seen them several times since that first gig, and hope to see them several times again. Always a brilliant live band. It's been fascinating as well to watch how Dave Grohl has now become the consummate frontman. In the early days, he kind of lacked a little bit of confidence in his vocal abilities and in his abilities to command the stage. But now he is a rip-roaring frontman, here, there and everywhere, got great stories to tell in between songs, has a great rapport with the crowd, and that's what's made Foo Fighters one of the biggest bands in the world. There you have it. Please press the red button to subscribe to the channel. It's free, it's easy to do, and there will be more about Foo Fighters in the future. Now, Foo Fighters don't have a massive discography, and I would normally recommend 4 albums to you to check out. And even though they've not got a massive discography, I'm still going to say, what am I going to pick? Let's say I'm going to pick, I'll pick the 4 albums. So, the debut album, Foo Fighters. Of course, Wasting Light. I would also check out this one. Probably the one that most fans will say is their best. The Colour and the Shape. I kind of put these two on a par, Colour and the Shape and Wasting Light. And for me, and some might disagree with this, I really enjoy this album as well. Sonic Highways. There's also a great documentary series that Dave Grohl made that went along with this album. Because this album as well has an interesting story to it. In that he travelled to different parts of America to study the history of American music, and each song kind of has its own little influence in that place where he was, and he wrote each song and recorded each song in that particular location at that time. It's a great documentary series. Whatever kind of music you're into, I would check it out. And I really love a lot of the tracks on this album. I think it's a very different kind of album. It's not got so much of your typical Foo Fighters songs on it, and I would thoroughly recommend it. If alone, just to hear the rip-off of Dio's Holy Diver, which I can't believe there hasn't been more said about this, because it's not a cover song, he's just ripped off the riff. Check it out. Check out the album and you'll find out what I mean, if you don't already know. Alright, thank you very much for watching, and remember, as always, we rock!